Konnichiwa, minasan. Welcome to English American Style. Today we're going to talk about fine. So translators, interpreters, ESL students, and others who are just trying to improve your English, and especially your English American style, we talk about it in the form of spoken and written, and often, usually. And today we're going to talk about fine. So right off the bat, the first thing that comes to mind related to fine is it is a response to a greeting. So when somebody comes up to you and says, "How you doing?" your response is fine. And the meaning of fine actually changes based on your tone of voice and probably some of your body language that goes with it. And so if you say, "Oh, I'm fine. I'm fine. How you doing?" Fine. And a lot of times we'll have the I'm in front of it, the I am, right? I'm fine. Sometimes you don't. You just say fine. So how you doing? I'm fine. How you doing? Fine. How you doing? Hey, I'm fine. The tone is going to make the difference in the meaning. So the meaning is going to change the sort of the understanding of how well somebody feels based on how their tone is, and in some cases if you can read their body language. So for example, I'll just use a sign language example too. My sign language students will like this. When we ask the question, "How are you?" or "How are you?" and don't tag it to that other phrase, because that's not mostly what it means. This is a greeting, and the main greeting to that is this. And so most people want to tag this word or this sign as fine, and it is fine, and it depends on the facial expression in the body, right? All of the non-manuals on what it is. So if somebody asks me, say, and I go, or I go, or I go, or I go, right? All of that has different meaning, and that just tells you the level of fine that I am. Fine meaning I'm okay. Some of the synonyms to the different types of tones is I'm okay, I'm all right. Oh, I'm right? That actually has its own meaning. You're never going to be able to write you're never going to be able to write that. And when I say that, somebody will figure out how to write it, but you would typically only use that in dialogue between characters anyway. You wouldn't use that in some other form. Or if they say, "Oh, I'm fine," that might be, "Oh, I'm really good," or maybe "I'm good," or maybe "I'm great." And can you use all of those other words? You can. But many Americans, when we get asked the question, "How are you? How's it going?" our response is fine. And then our tone will let you know what level of fine we are. So there are levels of fine between feeling great and feeling not so good, right? I'm all right, but I'm not. Could be better, right? Oh, I'm fine. And then because if you say, "Oh, I'm fine," they'll say, "Oh, well, what's wrong?" They might. If they care. Maybe they don't care. Because generically when we say, "How are you?" we don't really want anything other back than fine. And we typically just want it in a generic tone so that we don't have to ask you why you're feeling really good. Why do you feel great? "Oh, hey, how you doing?" "Fine." "Oh, I'm fine." What does that mean? "Well, why? What's going on?" I'm fine." "Oh, why? What's going on?" See, hear the tone? That tone changes the meaning. So not only did my response change, it actually made me change the tone in the question that came after it, right? When I say, "Oh, okay, why?" Or, "Oh, why?" The tone changes the meaning. So we'll talk about tone in some video. But for now, understand that typically the word fine, F-I-N-E, is a response to a greeting. The greetings are typically, "How are you?" "How's it going?" "How you doing?" "How are you doing?" Right? We don't pronounce it that way. We'll talk about pronunciations of those probably some point too. But in any case, generically, the word fine, the first tag emotion that you would get to it is a response or response, first tag response you would get is it's a response to a question. It also might mean something like really small. If we talk about grains of sand, they might be really fine, right? It could be like small and smooth. That might be another way you would use fine, right? The sand on the beach was coarse. No, the sand on the beach was fine. It doesn't mean that it has a feeling. It means that it's really small and smooth. And so coarse, right, that would mean that it's a little rough on the bottom of my feet. But if I'm walking on sand that's very fine, it typically would mean that it doesn't, the texture of the sand is not hurting my feet. It's very fine, very smooth. That might be true with some other texture related things too. It's very fine, very smooth. And then another use of the word fine might be related to how you think somebody looks. You'll hear this in movies, and especially probably I think it's going to be like 80s movies or 90s movies. I know it's movies your parents watch that you guys don't watch anymore. Where somebody might go, ooh, she's fine, or he's fine, right? And then they'll have a tone of, that means that person is very good looking, or at least in your perception or your opinion, that person is very good looking. So that might be another way that you hear or use fine in spoken. You might hear it related to somebody. Somebody might be also talking about their hair, right? And so when they say they have really fine hair, it might be, if they're talking about it in the form of texture, it might be that it's kind of thin. It might be really smooth. And it may not be a positive thing, so you kind of have to determine why the person, is their hair falling out, and so their hair is really fine. So that might be another way that you would hear the word fine. So when you're writing the word fine, it is simply spelled F-I-N-E, and probably in most of your types of papers, you're not really gonna use it very frequently, but you might, and if you do, it's probably going to be related to maybe texture, and something is very smooth and fine. And so kind of keep that in mind on how you might use it. If you have other ideas of how you might use fine, put them in the comments below. I would be interested in hearing them. If you have other pronunciations, you don't. But if you do, you don't. But if you do, feel free to put the other pronunciations of fine below and then tell us where you're from so that we can make fun of you because you don't have another way of saying fine. You might drag it out. She's fine. He's fine. But I don't know. I can't think of any other pronunciations of it. No. But if you do, put it in the comments below and tell us where you're from because we really do want to laugh at you. All right. And with that said, class dismissed.